Good morning, everybody. Happy Groundhog Day, and it's a beautiful Sunday morning, nice weather. We're going to start out with a little song called Lord, I Need You. No, this is Amazing Grace. Oh, Amazing Grace. My fault, my bad.
Power of sin and darkness, who loved his body so When I was bound, you set me free. At my worst, you did not leave. When I was darkness, you were light. When I was dead, you breathed new life. God, you changed my destiny. Now the only thing I see, your relentless love, ever chasing me. Your amazing grace has opened my eyes. Now I can see. You had a plan for me, even though I couldn't see it. You had a hope and a promise for my life.
We've been talking about parables that Jesus told, those stories Jesus told, and the parable we're talking about today is a little bit, at least, about fairness. And all of us have like an innate desire for fairness. And you may have heard people say things like, all I want is my fair share. All I want is what's fair to me. And when I think about that phrase, all I want is my fair share, I don't know about you, but I think about like the Peanuts Christmas special, where Charlie Brown, he's all upset, and because everyone's gone so commercial at Christmas, right? And he's just upset by the attitudes people have, and then even his little sister Sally, who comes to him and she wants help writing a letter to Santa Claus because she's too young, she can't write yet. So she has her big brother help write a letter to Santa Claus, and she's dictating the letter, and she says, "Dear Santa Claus, how have you been? Did you have a nice summer? How's your wife?" Gets the pleasantries out of the way first, right? And then she says, "I've been extra good this year, so I have a long list of presents that I want," because she's been extra good, so she wants more. And Charlie Brown's response is, "Oh, brother." And Sally goes on, she says, "Please note the size and color of each item and send as many as possible. If it seems too complicated, make it easy on yourself. Just send money. How about 10s and 20s? Charlie Brown's response is, "10s and 20s, oh, even my baby sister." And she says, "All I want is what I have coming to me. All I want is my fair share." So familiar kind of thought from children especially. My sister, I think about when I was growing up, my sister and I, when we would have to split something, whatever it was, it didn't matter. If it was a drink or food or something, if it was a drink, we were standing at the counter making sure they were exactly even, right? So that no one got more than the other one did. And if it was, food, we got to the point where my mom had this brilliant idea. She's like, one of you can break it in half, and then the other one can pick which piece they want. So, you were careful to split it as evenly as possible, because fairness is important, All kids say things like, "That's not fair." And most parents, I won't say every parent, but most parents' response to kids saying, "That's not fair," the parents say, "Life's not fair," right? We all know. Because life often seems unfair. And to be honest, there's different ways of looking at fairness. What is fair? If you, like my wife and I, we like watching reality TV show Survivor, and I know most of you don't watch it, but Survivor, they put you on an island somewhere, and they don't give you anything to eat, basically. They give you some rice, and then you got to fend for yourself. And so you get very little to eat, and you're stuck on this island with a bunch of people, and they make you do competitions and stuff, so you're expending energy, but not taking in any nourishment. And so, so the little bit of food they do give you, what's fair? Should everybody get the same amount of food? Would that be fair? Or should the guy who's 200 pounds and muscly and does most of the work at camp get more than the girl who's 100 pounds? What's fair? People may have different ideas about what's fair in that situation. In life is that way. Are all human lives equally valuable? Where, no one's more important than anyone else? So we should all get equal slices of the pie? Or do some people deserve more because, they're more valuable to society, or they're more important in some way? Maybe they work harder, they have a special skill or something. They put more effort into the community. Maybe they deserve more because of their place in the community. What's fair? And if there's disparity, how much disparity, how much of a difference is too much before it's unfair? And this idea about fairness is hardwired into our brains. Most of you know I was a psych major in college, and, not the kind of psych where you go and figure out why you hate your mother. Not that kind of psych. It's more like the science-y kind of psychology, so like experiments to see like how people respond to certain circumstances, or how their mind works, how their perceptions and their kind of habits and stuff like that. So it's more of a experimental kind of psychology. That's the kind of psychology I was exposed to in college. So I love those experiments where they do things to figure out, how we think and how we respond to different situations. And some of those involve people, some involve animals. And there's this one experiment about fairness where they have these monkeys, and they have them do a task, and then when they do their task, they give them a reward. And so they found out that if the monkeys do this task, and they give them each a slice of cucumber, they're happy to take that cucumber and eat it. Or if they do the task and you give them both a grape, they're happy to take the grape and eat that too. But here's the thing. When they do their task, and they're sitting there next to each other, and you give one a cucumber and one a grape, chances are very high that the one you give a cucumber to is going to throw it back at you because it's upset they didn't get a grape. A sense of unfairness. And, that cucumber they were happy to have, if the other one got a cucumber, now they'd rather have nothing. They just want to throw it back at you. And they've done the same thing, the same sort of experiment with people. With adults, they use money. With children, they use candy. And what they found out is that from a very early age, children have this kind of sense about, if they're really little, they don't care. They're just happy to get some candy. But at a certain age, like 2 or 3, they want to get what the other person got. So that sense of fairness starts very early. And the way they do that with adults, they say they give one person like $23, and they tell that person they have to split the money with their partner. But the partner can accept or reject the offer. So say that the one guy keeps 18 and gives his partner 5. If the partner is like, nope, forget it, he can reject the offer and neither one will get anything. So there's that sense of, and some people do that. They'd rather have 0 than have $5 they didn't have before if the other person's getting 3 times as much or more. So anyway, fairness is something that we all deal with, and it's something that is kind of ingrained is hardwired in us. And they found out that, like, with animals, the person at the disadvantage is the one that's complaining usually, or the one that's not accepting the split. But with people, in certain cultures, even the person who, if there's a split, sometimes even the person with the advantage will say, that's not fair. I don't like this deal. That happens less frequently than the person who is at a disadvantage. The person at a disadvantage almost always says, it's not fair. But fairness is something that we all have inside of us, that sense that things ought to be fair somehow. And because fairness indicates something to us. Fairness indicates that we're valued. It indicates that you're important when you're treated fairly and evenly. When you're treated unfairly, that communicates to your group that, your community doesn't care about you very much. If you're treated unfairly, you feel like you're not valuable, that you're not wanted there, that you're not important. And with children, especially like siblings, feelings of unfairness may lead to feelings of resentment, when the one child thinks the other child is treated better, they start feeling like, oh, he's the favorite or she's the favorite, and you start feeling neglected or unimportant or unwanted. And sometimes, with the pair of siblings, brother and sister, say, they may both feel like the other one's the favorite, right? Because it always feels like you're getting the short end of things sometimes. You're always comparing, and you're more likely to see the negative side of things. So anyway, these feelings of fairness are really important to us. And when we're treated fairly, it leads to feelings like that we're trusted, that we're important, and we're trusted, that we're wanted. Teddy Roosevelt said, comparison is the thief of joy. And sometimes when we compare ourselves to others, it takes the joy away from us because we're always looking for the ways that we're not valued as much as someone else. And sometimes we all know, that it's not just growing up. Sometimes we know that in life, life just isn't fair. It really isn't fair sometimes. It doesn't feel fair. Things that happen to us sometimes that feel, undeserved. I think about a story. I heard Erwin McManus, the pastor of Mosaic. I've heard this story from him many, many times now about how he had this business partner, and he had just reinvested everything they had made a profit back into this business. And so millions of dollars he had invested in his business. And his partner, one day, just took the money and ran. And he was out millions of dollars, several $1 million, and how that just was devastating to him. How that he hated going back and telling his wife that day that they had lost all this money. And they had debt because of that he had to pay. And so that's a part of the story I'd heard many times, and how he had persevered through those things and come out at the other side and recover, but it took time and it was a painful experience. What I didn't know was that earlier he'd gotten a text from a guy he didn't know, but a guy who must have been connected enough to be able to get his phone number to text him. He texted Erwin, and he told him that he had this daughter, and his daughter had been in a plane crash, and she'd survived. But in the plane crash, she had to crawl out over the body of her fiancé to escape, and she was pretty badly burned from the whole thing. And how she was angry at God, how she had become an atheist. And he said, I know you don't know me, but my daughter listens to your podcast all the time. And I was just wondering if you would just get on the phone and talk to her. And Erwin told him, no, I'm not going to do that. But what I will do is I'll fly out to Texas, and I'll come to your house, and I'll talk to her. And so he said, I'll bring my daughter, because my daughter's about your daughter's age. So he and his daughter flew to Texas, went to their house, spent the day with them, talking to her about God and about what happened to her. And while he was there, doing a kind, generous, loving thing, he got the text about his business partner stealing all his money. So there's that contrast, right, where you have a person doing something amazingly kind, who's at the same time having to deal with something devastating. It just felt unfair. So we all know, to some degree or another, those times when life just doesn't feel fair. So that's what the parable today is about, a little bit anyway. And in the parable today, are people who feel like things in their life are just unfair, and they're complaining about it. A few weeks ago in the parable, we talked about where the people got the different amounts of money. You know, they get the talents. The one guy had 5 bags of gold, one guy had 2 bags of gold, one guy had 1 bag of gold, and the guy had 1 bag, went and dug a hole and hid it in the ground, and the other people invested their money and got more, and how those people were praised. In that parable, the money is divided unequally based on their trustworthiness, right? How much they can be trusted. In today's story, it's not, they're all given the same amount. In that story, a few weeks ago, it was about what they earned. And in this story, it's about what they're given generously. So it's a completely different kind of situation. So before we start the story, it's in Matthew 18, but before we start, it's in Matthew, the story's in Matthew 20, actually. Before we get to that story, though, it's important to know the context around that story. And so Matthew 18, 19, and 20 are all about like people worrying about who's the greatest, who's most important, all about comparing yourself to other people and seeing who's, getting ahead or not. And the disciples have this question in Matthew 18. They're arguing amongst themselves, who's the greatest? And Jesus, he knows what they're saying. And so Jesus pulls a little child aside, and he tells them, if you are as humble, this is Matthew 18:4, if you are as humble as this child, you are the greatest in the kingdom of heaven. So this humble child is the greatest. This is what greatness is about in the kingdom of heaven. It's a different kind of way of thinking about greatness. Sometimes, in the Bible, we start thinking the Bible is all about helping us understand God, helping us see what God is like. And it does do that. But the Bible is also about helping us to see ourselves, helping us to understand what we're like and how we could be different, how we can be better and more. Hebrews 4:12 says, "For the word of God is alive and powerful. It is sharper than the sharpest two-edged sword, cutting between soul and spirit, between joint and marrow. It exposes our innermost thoughts and desires." The Bible, cuts us to show us who we are, to expose the things that maybe we hide from ourselves even, things that we need to see about ourselves. And so that's what this parable is about. It's not just about what God is like, it's about what we're like too. And it's in Matthew 20, verses 1 to 16. As Jesus was telling what the kingdom of heaven would be like, he said, "Early one morning, a man went out to hire some workers for his vineyard. After he agreed to pay them the usual amount for a day's work, he sent them off to his vineyard. About 9 that morning, the man saw some other people standing in the market with nothing to do. He promised to pay them what was fair if they would work in his vineyard, so they went. At noon, and again about 3 in the afternoon, he returned to the market, and each time he made the same agreement with others who were loafing around with nothing to do. Finally, about 5 in the afternoon, the man went back and found some others standing there, and he asked them, "Why have you been standing here all day long doing nothing?" Because no one has hired us, they answered. Then he told them to go work in his vineyard. That evening, the owner of the vineyard told the man in charge of the workers to call them in and give them their money. He also told the man to begin with the ones who were hired last. When the workers arrived, the ones who had been hired at 5 p.m, were given a full day's pay. The workers who had been hired first thought they'd be given more than the others, but when they were given the same, they began to complaining to the owner of the vineyard. They said, the one who were hired last for only 1 hour, but you paid them the same that you did us. And we worked in the hot sun all day long. The owner answered one of them, friend, I didn't cheat you. I paid you exactly what we agreed to. Take your money now and go. What business is it of yours if I want to pay them the same that I paid you? Don't I have the right to do what I want with my own money? Why should you be jealous if I want to be generous? Jesus then said, so it is, everyone who is now last will be first, and everyone who is first will be last. In this parable, Jesus challenges our human sense of fairness and entitlement. Through the story, he invites us to reflect on the nature of God's kingdom, God's goodness, and the radical generosity of grace. You know, in the story, this landowner hires workers throughout the day. It's early in the morning, like 6 in the morning, 9, noon, 3, 5. They work till 6. The last guys only work 1 hour. The first ones work 12. And it's like if you've ever seen a movie where the guy who has a farm where they do vegetables or something, he goes to the town square with his pickup truck and he hires migrant workers. And he says, I need 12 people. And so he gets 12 people in the back of this pickup and he goes back to the farm. And so this is kind of the situation here. The guy comes and picks. There's people standing around waiting to work. He picks out a bunch. They go back. And then he decides he needs more. So he goes back and he goes back and he goes back. And each time he gets more people to do the work. And then when it comes time to pay them, the ones who are paid, who come to work last, get paid first. And that's done so that the people who, for the sake of the story, so the people who were hired first can see that they're getting the amount that they were promised, and they then hope, they think they ought to get more because they worked, 12 times as much as those last guys, and they did it during the heat of the day. So maybe this guy's going to give us something extra. But then at the end of the day, everybody gets the same wage, a normal day's wage. And the people who are hired first, they grumble. They feel like it's unfair that those who worked less get paid the same. And if they didn't have anyone else to compare themselves with, if they'd gotten paid in reverse order and not known, they'd have been happy with their wage because they got exactly what they were told they would get. But they do wind up knowing what the other people made, and then it feels unfair, even though it's exactly what they were told they would get. And so they grumble. And the landowner says, friend, it's in a kind way, friend, I'm not being unfair. Didn't you agree to work for a day's wage? Am I not allowed, he says, to do what I want with what belongs to me? Or are you envious because I'm generous? And this reveals the true focus of the parable, the goodness of God, the nature of God's grace. And none of us really deserve that. But God gives it to us all equally. And God gives it freely. And God's grace is not measured by how long we work or how hard we work. It's given to everyone freely by who respond to his call. So if, like, you wind up accepting Jesus into your life later in your life, it's not held against you. You're not, like, getting less in heaven because over someone who worked their whole life trying to serve Jesus. But that early worker's complaint reflects our human pride and our kind of transactional mindset. You know, I earned this, so I deserve more. But God's grace humbles us, reminds us that all we have is a gift. Everything we have is a gift from God, not a reward for our efforts. It's all because of God's love for us, God who loves all of us. And there's this trap of comparing ourselves to others. And this comparing ourselves hurts us in different ways. Sometimes we compare ourselves to others, and maybe we have an overinflated opinion of ourselves. We may be thinking we're getting less than we deserve. Someone else is getting something we don't get, and so we're like, I'm better than that person. Come on, I should be getting more. Or maybe it works the opposite way where, you know, we are kind of down on ourselves. We think we're not valuable. We think we're not important. And so we look at others and we see the things that they have, whether it's money or their gifts or talents, and we just wind up feeling bad about ourselves because we're comparing ourselves and we're not seeing our true value sometimes. Comparing only does damage. It's never helpful. I think about, like, those people who complained that the people who got hired for, like, 1 hour got the same as they did. And I think about, like, how would you feel if that person who got hired for an hour and got a full day's wage for that was somebody you really loved, who you knew had a family, who needed to eat and needed to pay their bills? Would you be upset if someone you loved got a full day's wage for just working an hour, even if you got the same thing? Wouldn't you be happy for your friend that you care about? Maybe sometimes the problem is just we don't love enough. If we loved them, wouldn't we be happy for them? Parable is a reminder that God is so generous with us. You know, I think about, like, when I think about what God does in our lives, I'm never surprised that, gee, God is really tough on me today. God is really being, you know, hard on me, and he's not really fair how hard he's being on me. I never am surprised by God in that kind of way. I'm always surprised by, you know, how much God loves me. I'm shocked sometimes, like, how loved I can feel when I don't feel like I ought to be loved. I'm surprised at how generous God is sometimes. I'm surprised at how good God is to me sometimes, or how good God is to others. I'm, like, blown away by that kindness and love. That's the thing that often surprises me. So this parable is about God's goodness and God's character, but it's also about our character. It's a reminder to be grateful and not jealous. You know, our character is all about the choices that we make. And, you know, the most important, the best things we do, they're all hard things. Not the best things we do are always require some effort and are difficult. Especially the things that are part of our character. And choices like, you know, to be grateful. Sometimes it's hard to be grateful. But choosing to be grateful and then integrating that gratitude into our lives, you know, having a life of gratitude, not just grateful here and there, but a life that the whole life is a life of gratitude. When we have a life like that, where our whole life reflects gratitude, we have this kind of wholeness, this healing that happens in us. where it becomes less about what we deserve and more about, what we want to contribute. That leads to this kind of generosity that we ought to have because we've been given so much. And I think this parable is, in a way, a reminder to us to have that kind of generosity of spirit where there's a 2% principle, like where you always give more than you take. Even if it's the 2% difference, 51% of giving and 49% taking. Even if it's just that little bit, if everybody did that, the world would be a better place. And we all have needs. We all have expectations, so we're all always going to be a little bit of a taker. But if we can give in whatever room we're in, if we can be a giver rather than a taker, wherever we are, not just with the people that we care about and love, but everywhere, if we can be a giver more than a taker, then we begin to have the character that we ought to have. And this parable reminds us that God's kingdom operates on a completely different principle than the world. It's not about merit or fairness as we understand it, but it's about grace. Lavish, undeserved, and freely given. And our character ought to reflect God's goodness in us. Last little thing. I don't know if any of you guys watch Stephen Colbert's late night show. We usually watch it like in the morning. But Stephen Colbert, he's a comedian. Has one of those like Johnny Carson's show used to be. And he'll interview like celebrities. And one of the things I've seen him do lately anyway is he asks them, he has like a Colbert quiz where he'll ask the celebrity a bunch of questions. And most of the questions are, silly questions or not important questions, like apples or oranges, which do you prefer? And what number am I thinking about? And things like that. But the last question he asks them is always, I think, really revealing. He asks them, he says, describe the rest of your life in 5 words. What are the 5 words that you want to describe your future? Just take 10 seconds and think, what are the 5 words that you want to describe your future? So I as I listen to other people do that, or who are asked that question, I think it's kind of revealing about their character. If you think about those 5 words that you came up with in your head, are those words taking words, or are they giving words? Are they about what you want, or about what you can contribute? Only you know. If they're taking words, if they're like more than 3 or more than 2, maybe think about what you can contribute. Think about what God has given us.
Lord, I come, I confess, falling here, I find my rest. Without you, I fall apart. You're the one my hope and stay. Lord, I need you. Oh, I need you. Every hour I need you. My one defense, my only sense. Oh God, how I need you. You're my one defense, my righteousness. Oh God, how I need you. You're my one defense, my righteousness. Oh God, how I need you. Thank you for coming. Everybody have a beautiful Sunday. Nice weather out there. And let God follow you through the week. Thanks again. See you next week.